It's Motivation Monday, a new week, a fresh start and another opportunity to level up. This is your moment to reset your mindset, refocus your energy, and realign with your purpose. Whatever didn't work last week, that's done. Today you move differently, stronger, smarter, more disciplined, because growth doesn't come from comfort. It comes from pressure, consistency, and showing up when it's hard. No excuses, no distractions, just elevation. The grind starts now, the discipline kicks in today. And the results, that's on you. Every move you make this week is building something bigger. So set the tone today, or spend the rest of the week trying to catch up. Because every Monday is a chance to rewrite your story, to step into a new version of yourself. This isn't just another week. This is your rebirth, Motivation Monday, powered by the Final Boss.
Welcome to the Final Boss Podcast, Monday night edition, right? It's Motivation Monday. And man, you already know I got a great show for you. I have a fantastical show for you tonight, man. Listen, to the smarts, motivators, warriors, and final bosses, thank you guys. Thank you for all of you for always being here on time. I really appreciate you. Now, look, man, this is episode 251. Man, 251. Last night was a humdinger. I bet you haven't heard that word in a very long time, right? But last night was incredible, man. We reached episode 250. Tonight is episode 251. Right? Hey, Jacondi, I see you in the building. All right, let's see who else is in the building. We got the usual characters in the building. It's going to be a fantastical Motivation Monday, right? Let's get rid of the banners. Banners are out of here. And listen, man, the greeting of the day. Look, it's right here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And always, as always, remember that this is for entertainment purposes only. Entertainment purposes only. Entertainment purposes only. Entertainment purposes only. Listen, man, you know I'm always hyped up for Motivation Mondays, right? And look, we got a great show for you tonight, man. I'm going to be talking about the construction, because we're in the construction, right? This is season 4, the rebirth, arc 4, the construction. We got more constructing to do, right? And this construction is the metaphor for what we're doing when we're building ourselves and building ourselves floor by floor, right? And that's what it's about, man. Last arc was the foundation. We laid the slab, we cured it, and now we're building on top of the slab, right? And that's what this show is all about. So let me get some of these sound bites and widgets and all this other good stuff out the way, and give me some good old sound effects, right? So tonight, of course, we have the Fired Up train in the building. Shout out to the Fired Up train, man. And listen, if you haven't picked up the Amazon bestseller, Go Time All Aboard the Fired Up train, go pick it up. Go pick it up, man, and make sure you like, share, subscribe. All of the content, no matter where you see us at, man, where you see us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, Kick, Instagram, Spotify, StreamYard, YouTube, LinkedIn, right? We're everywhere, right? We're everywhere with more platforms to come, man, with more platforms to come. You just heard the Fired Up train, man. We all aboard. The conductor is waiting. The ticket man is out picking up everybody's tickets, and we're going to get into tonight's episode, man. And look, the first destination for tonight, right? Let me get my magic wand. Look, I need you guys to stop counting other people's receipts. That's the name of the show. Stop counting other people's receipts, right? And we're gonna get into it, right? We're gonna get into it, man. And look, I, yes, I'm gonna tell you the real reason your construction is stalled out right now, right? And it's not fear, and it's not laziness, it's not the economy, it's not even your past. It is something you're doing, and you're doing it on purpose every single day. And you're calling it staying informed. But let me tell you, that's not it, right? And stay with me. Stay with me, right? Because I'm going to name it specifically because I know exactly what it is. And you're going to feel a certain way about it. You might even have a little thump in your chest, right? You might have a little thump in your chest. So, this episode, right? This episode, we're going to be talking about the comparison trap, right? And the comparison trap is not a feeling. It is a mechanism, and it runs in the background of every builder's week and steals construction time while you're wearing the disguise of awareness, right? Arc for the construction has one currency, and that is receipts, right? You either stack your own or you spend your energy counting someone else's, right? You can't do both. You cannot do both, people, right? You can't do both, man. So, right, with that being said, let's discuss tonight's lens of the evening because we're in the rebirth, right? Because the rebirth is the reborn version of you, and it does not measure itself against other people's timeline. It measures itself against its own blueprint. The rebirth stripped the old identity that needed external validation to feel legitimate, right? The sovereign version that emerged from the clearing and the foundation builds that you built last arc. And then we're going to be talking about the internal architecture, not comparative positioning, right? Because this is episode 251. And then we're going to be enforcing the standard in the active way, right? In the active way. Now, wait a minute. I got some messages. Let's see what's going on. Woohoo! What up? I see you, Cam. I see you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Listen, man. So the brass tacks of the evening. Let's go into the brass tacks, man. I'm gonna try to end the show tonight on time for a change, right? For a change, right? Brass tacks of the evening coming from yours truly, right? You can get this brass tacks out of go time, all aboard the fired up train, right? And here it is. The builder who spends the construction phase counting other people's receipts will arrive at the declaration with data and no structure. Data is not a building. You need to build the thing you said you were going to build. And that's tonight's brass tacks, man, coming from yours truly, right? So, look. I told you a few minutes ago, I was going to name the thing that is stalling your construction right now, right? I said that. And here it is, right? I know you're waiting. Right? Listen to me. You, yes, you are addicted to other people's progress, right? You're addicted to other people's progress, right? And you're not afraid of yours. You're not avoiding yours. You're addicted to watching theirs. And the addiction is sophisticated enough that your brain has classified it as productive behavior. You call it market research. You call it competitive intelligence. You call it staying connected to the community. And then you like to call it inspiration. But the output of the session is always the same, right? You start to close those apps a little slower, right? The energy in whatever room you're in is a little lower, right? And your own blueprint that you crafted and wrote and spent time in creating is still sitting on your business desk, your kitchen table, your bar, untouched. And that's the thing, right? That is what is costing you the most time in this arc, in arc of construction, arc 4. Not comparison as a feeling, but comparison as a behavioral pattern that runs automatically and dresses itself as something legitimate every time, every single time, right? If you're new here, welcome. I see a lot of new names in here, man. Look, this is Motivation Monday, season 4, the rebirth arc for the construction, episode number 251. I am the final boss, right? I'm your host, your builder, your fellow sovereign in this art. We're live 9 p.m. Eastern time each and every single Monday. No exceptions, no cancellation, no rain delays. The show runs because the community needs it to run. And tonight, the community needs a specific conversation more than any feel-good recap that we could have done this week, right? We could have done a recap. Haven't done a recap in a very long time, right? But we're going to talk about episodes from about 2 weeks ago. Because 2 weeks ago, on episode number 241, we dropped the thesis for this very arc, the construction, right? And we said execution is the receipt. Arc 4 does not pay in ideas. Arc 4 counts output. It counts things built. It counts things that are shipped. It counts logistics. It counts contracts. It counts what is live, right? And that, right, friends, was just the opening gavel, right? Tonight is the first escalation because 2 weeks into the build window, the most common construction killer is not starting wrong. It's the slow poison of waiting other people or watching other people, I should say, watching other people build while you're supposed to be building, right? You got a whole plate full of Lego blocks, and you look over you to your right, you look to your left, and everybody has their Lego blocks too. This person on your left just built the castle. This person over here just built the entire Star Wars franchise, and you're twiddling your thumbs playing with your Lego blocks, right? And here's the uncomfortable truth, right? I'm going to spend this episode proving to you that the comparison trap does not attack lazy people. The lazy people do not care enough to compare. Wait, red flag, man, listen, that's one of them gems that I say that I have to stop myself in the middle of the conversation and write it down. Go write that down, right? If anybody caught it, go write it down while I try to remember exactly what I said. Listen, lazy people do not care enough to compare. The comparison traps attacks the builders, right? They attack people who are planning to build a Coliseum. They're attacking people who are trying, people who have a real foundation, a real blueprint, a real mission. The trap finds the builder at the exact moment of maximum vulnerability, which is the moment when the work is real, but the results are not yet visible. And that, right? That right there, listen, that's when it says, look at them, right? Look at them. Look at how visible their results are, right? Look at the builder that's building over there to your right and to your left. And that builder keeps looking, right? And that is the trap. And tonight, we're going to name it. We're going to be dissecting it. And we're going to install the protocol that ends it, right? Because this is the construction window. And to every smarts in the building, you are the most sophisticated version of this trap, and I'm going to explain exactly why later on. And to my final bosses, you know this is happening. You have been doing it in private and hoping nobody will call it out. Consider it called out, right? And to every motivator, your voice is being stolen one borrowed phrase at a time, and we're stopping that tonight. And to my warriors, you were trained to measure position. Tonight, we talk about the difference between tactical intelligence and self-sabotage by the comparison trap, right? All full communities, one art, one mission. Stay with me, right? Stay with me, right? Because the thing costing you the most time in Arc 4 has been named. Now we're going to build a solution. We're going to build us a solution, right? Give me a second. Let me see something. Boop, 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 boop. Give me a second. Does anybody, I figured it out once before, but I can't figure it out right now. And I don't have the time to figure it out. Trying to see the live on my phone on IG. I don't know why I can't do that anymore. Oh well. All right. So where were we? We were talking about what we've named, and now we're going to be talking about the solution, right? And before I teach you anything tonight, I'm going to tell you something I've never said on this show at this level of specificity, right? Because I'm not asking you to do anything I've not already lived and done. And the cost of this thing I'm about to describe was real. The number attached to it was real, right? Listen. In the 18 months between episode 150 and 200 of the podcast, I lost approximately a lot of money, right? A lot. A lot in recoverable revenue, right? And it's not money that I've never had, but it was money that was on the table, money that was lined up for deals, for marketing, for putting this very vehicle in a nice position, right? And it was money from partnerships that were warm, money from content opportunities that had real commercial value, right? And it was lost. Delayed revenue directly attributable to construction time I spent watching and measuring other people's brands instead of executing on my own roadmap, right? I know what you're thinking, right? But I want to be precise right here, right? And let you know exactly what I mean, right? I'm hot, so bear with me. Oh, green on green. I got a green shirt on. Oh, okay, green on green. I'm not talking about money that was blown because of bad decisions, right? I'm talking about the compound cost of hours spent scrolling platforms, analyzing other podcasters' growth, calculating their audience versus mine, studying with brand aesthetic, and wondering if mine was right. Watching their sponsorship announcements and calculating what their CPM suggested about their revenue, right? All of that activity felt productive because it required cognitive engagement. It looked like strategy. It, my friends, was erosion, right? And then when I was building Saturn Digital Networks, I was in the middle of writing the Go Time series, right? And I was in the middle of developing the Merger Wednesdays architecture. And I was building a doctoral framework, even before I got accepted into the program, right? Because I had real work to do. And that had real commercial and legacy value attached to it, right? And I consistently was redirecting between 10 and 20 hours a week watching others build instead of working on my own product, right? And $40,000 is the number. Because I know what you guys was wondering. If you do the math, you will see that it was the time wasted was worth $40,000, and which is very conservative. Right? It's a conservative number, but it was the cost during that window. We're talking man hours, right? We're talking about productivity, right? Because it does not count against the momentum. It does not count about the compound effect of the receipts that were stacked during those hours, right? And there were a lot. It does not count what those 40 hours a week across 18 months could have produced if they had been applied to the actual mission. And look, I'm telling you this number because tonight I need you to understand that this is not soft conversation. We don't do soft conversation over here, right? This is a hard conversation about financial and legacy costs. The comparison trap is not an emotional inconvenience. It is an economic event. Every hour you spend counting someone else's receipts is an hour that you're not producing yours, right? Somebody capture that, right? And at the end of arc 4, those hours either show up as structure or they show up as regret. We talk about regret all the time, right? It's in our closing statement, right? And I did not fully break the pattern until I started tracking the output on both sides of the equation. What did I actually produce this week? What did I produce with zero output? And I was watching someone else produce, doom scrolling, doing all of those things, right? I thought it was research and being productive, but it wasn't, right? And when I saw both columns side by side in real numbers, the behavior changed, right? Not because I felt bad about it, but because the data was undeniable, right? The numbers don't lie, people. The numbers do not lie, right? The numbers don't lie. And that is the cost confection that I'm giving you tonight, right? 40 stacks and 18 months of compounded opportunity cost, right? That's a real number. I put my name on it like Denzel, right? Not hypothetical, right? Now I'm going to teach you the mechanism so you can stop it before it costs you the same or more, right? Because I need you to be paying attention, right? Because this conversation right here is worth more than any content you've been consuming this week. I put money on it. Matter of fact, I'll put 40K on it, right? You haven't been watching anything that's in comparison to what you're going to be watching tonight, right? And if you walk away tonight and implement one protocol, I'm about to give you the return on investment on this single episode, and it won't exceed the cost of any course that you've ever purchased, right? So stay with me. Stay with me, right? Now, let me break this down. Let me break this down exactly how the comparison trap runs so you can see it in real time. And the next, so you can recognize it, right? Because you cannot stop a mechanism you have not mapped. Most people try to stop comparison by feeling better about themselves. Listen, that don't work, right? You stop a mechanism by understanding its sequence and interrupting before it completes its cycle. We're all about cycles and stages here, right? And arcs, right? It's important, right? Now, let's talk about stage 1, right? Stage 1 will be the trigger, right? It's something in your real life that creates a gap between your expectation and your current reality. Let's say a post that didn't perform well, right? Or you're working on a business deal and it fell through, right? Or the week didn't produce the positive outcomes that you thought it would or that you had planned. Now, listen, those gaps are real, right? The discomfort you feel is real. The discomfort actually means you care, right? Which is a good sign, actually, right? But instead of sitting in that discomfort and diagnosing your own gap, you reach for your phone and the phone is ready. The phone is like, please pick me up. Please, 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 please. Please pick me up, Mr. Turbo, right? I'm right here with you. You don't have to be uncomfortable. Let's see what we could doom scroll, right? The phone is talking to you, right? The phone is talking to you. And then, right, let's talk about stage two. Stage two is the calculation. And this is where it becomes a mechanism and not just a feeling, because your brain starts running numbers automatically. And then it says, well, how many followers do you have? How many episodes did you post, right? How did your last launch perform? What does your brand look like compared to mine, right? The calculation runs without permission, right? And you're not choosing to compare. The mechanism is executing itself using your attention as fuel, right? And then there's stage three. Stage three, I'm going to be dropping some bombs in here in a second, right? Stage three is the verdict. It's the verdict, right? The brain needs resolution, so it delivers one, right? It delivers one, man. It's for real. It will deliver, right? I'm telling you. And either you're thinking that person is either ahead of me or I'm ahead of them, right? Neither outcome is useful. If they are ahead of you, you generate inadequacy, envy, jealousy, right? Whatever. If you are ahead of them, you generate temporary relief followed immediately by the need to check again. Both outcomes extract energy from your construction and deposit it nowhere where productivity lives, right? Nowhere where productivity lives. Now, let's talk about stage four. Stage four is the redirect, right? It's the redirect. This is the one nobody talks about, right? After the comparison cycle runs, you do not go back to your own work with fresh energy. You go back contaminated. And now you are not building what you were supposed to be building. You're not building your structure. You are building something that looks like their structure, but faster, right? Your blueprints have been silently replaced by a downloaded version of theirs. And that blueprint does not fit your foundation. And listen, it never will, right? It never will. The whole cycle takes between 7 and 45 minutes, depending on the platform and the sovereignty of the trigger. And it runs multiple times a day for most builders in an active construction phase, right? And here's a specific weapon this trap uses against each and every last single one of us that's in the community. So listen up, smarts, final bosses, warriors, and motivators. Listen, all right? For my smarts, we're going to start with you guys, right? The trap disguises itself as research. I said that earlier, right? The intellectual machinery that makes you a strategic thinker is the exact system that traps and hijacks, right? You're not scrolling, you're analyzing, except the output of the analysis is not a clearer plan for your own work. The output is anxiety about someone else's trajectory, right? And for my final bosses, the trap disguises itself as a competitive positioning. You're not comparing. You are doing market intelligence, except you are doing it at 11 p.m. on a Sunday when there is no decision being made and no strategy being updated. You're just running the numbers because the numbers will not leave you alone, right? They won't leave you alone. That's those Kanye voices, right? Excuse me. Shout out to Kanye. Man, those voices get in your head, man, and won't leave you alone, right? Who can attest to that? Raise your hand. Drop it in the chat, man. Drop it in the chat, man. If you have those voices that won't leave you alone until you accomplish something or it wants you to do what it wants you to do, right? Put your hand up, right? Drop the hand emoji in the chat. Now, my motivators. The trap disguises itself as community engagement. You're learning from other voices in your space, except you leave those sessions sounding more like them and less like you, right? Too easy, right? And for my warriors, the trap uses the trained measurement of reflex against you. You were built to assess position. The trap turns that into a civilian comparison loop that has no tactical value and significant psychological cost. All four of my families, all four disguises, same trap, same outcome. Construction delayed, right? Now, we're going to interrupt the cycle, but stay with me, right? We're going to stay on target. Wait a minute. Got another message. Let's see. I'm acknowledging messages tonight. Hey, that's what I'm talking about. Drop those hand emojis. I see you. That's what I'm talking about, right? That's what I'm talking about, right? Now, I need to say something that some of you are not going to like. I usually say something on each episode that you guys aren't going to like, right? So it happens, right? If you're not new to the show, you understand. Well, you do understand. Those who are new to the show, just hey, man, listen. It comes with the territory, right? I need to say this because this conversation, it makes people feel uncomfortable, right? And that's not going to help. That's not helping anyone, right? Because the comfortable version is that comparison is natural and that you have to be kind to yourself and that you're going to be great. But what I'm here to tell you is that version does not build empires. What builds empires is this right here, right? And most of you in the room right now have more infrastructure than output. You have, let's say you have a podcast and your podcast, you got 6 episodes, right? Or you have a business plan that has never seen a paying client, right? Or you have a brand aesthetic or some marketing, right? And you spent some money on a product and it's sitting on your shelf and you need to ship it, right? Or you're taking a course and that course has been sitting in Google for 11 months, right? And you keep saying, I'm going to get to it. The intent is to get to it, right? And then there's people who maybe writing a book, right? And you finish one chapter, right? And that chapter is the same chapter that you finished 3 years ago, right? You wrote one chapter of the book 3 years ago, right? Or some of you are doing branding, and maybe you have a logo, and it's not bringing no revenue in. Right? I mean, these things happen. And every single week, you're auditing other people's revenue, their audience size, their deal announcements, their book sales, their speaking fees, while your own chapter, right, chapter 3, sits at 847 words. And that's a random number. I don't know where that came from, right? And it's been touched. It hasn't been touched since last February, right? I don't know, static, something. Since last February. And that's not a mindset, people. That's not a mindset problem. That is a behavioral problem. That is a discipline problem, right? And behavioral problems have behavioral solutions. Discipline problems have discipline solutions, right? And I'm not here to humiliate anyone, man. I don't want you guys feeling bad, right? I'm just saying it because the version of the Final Boss community that I'm building toward does not need to be protected from the truth, right? I was talking to a young man earlier. Shout out to him, man. We were talking about this very thing, right? Too many people want to be coddled and feel protected, and they don't want to hear the truth anymore. They just want to hear the niceties, right? What is going on? What is happening in the world, right? And smarts, you're smart enough to handle it. Final bosses, you're tough enough to handle it. Motivators are resilient enough to handle it, right? And then my warriors, of course, right? My warriors survive things that make the conversation look like a warm-up, right? And all four of my families, all four of the communities, they can hold up this verdict, right? Because the verdict actually means you're going to need to do some action. You're going to need to take some action this week, right? It means the gap between your infrastructure and the output is the real measurement of the comparisons traps damage in your own specific situation. Not how you feel about other people's success, right? The gap between what you have built or plan to build, right, versus what you've already done. We're talking about planning intent and what you've already done, right? Because the person with the best home recording studio and 6 episodes is not ahead of the person with a phone mic and 40 episodes. Equipment is not a receipt. That was something I had to learn the hard way, right? I didn't think the equipment was good enough. Then, with that, you have to understand that consistency is the receipt. And consistency is one of the 6 pillars of success that you can find in Go Time All Aboard the Fired Up Train, right? The business plan that's laying in your database somewhere. That's not a receipt. The signed contract is the receipt, right? The course outline isn't the receipt. Anybody can download a course outline. What's the receipt? The paid enrollment. Enrollment is the receipt, right? When you spend ARC 4 counting other people's receipts instead of producing your own, what you're actually doing is widening the gap between infrastructure and output. The equipment gets better, the brain gets more polished, the strategy gets more refined, and the actual deliverable stays on draft, right? In draft mode. Now, ARC 4 is around, ARC 5 is the declaration, and it's around the corner. ARC 5, the declaration is around the corner. It'll be starting at episode 271, right? And that's about 8 weeks from now. And when it opens, the final boss, me, right? I'm going to be asking every single family in this room to stand on something real, not something planned, not something in progress, but something built, something visible, something that a stranger can interact with, right? Because if you make it to episode 271 with a beautifully analyzed competitor landscape and nothing that you built for yourself, right? If you haven't done it, you don't have a declaration. You're not in the you won't be progressing into the declaration arc, right? What you have actually is an observation, right? And observations are not declarations, right? So look, stop counting, start producing. The verdict is delivered, and what happens after that is entirely up to you, right? You are your own final boss. You're your own smarts, your own motivator, your own warrior, right? Good thing of it. Now, why this affects the smarts the hardest, right? Is this because smarts are going to push back on what I just said. They always do, right? I'm gonna get the emails, I'm gonna get the messages, right? From my smarts community. It's okay, right? Because I know, because the smarts always have a framework for why their behavior is justified. They're very chatty, right? So let me get ahead of it, right? To my smarts. Listen, I'm teasing, I'm joshing, guys. Look, don't be getting offended, don't be shooting me these crazy emails. Listen. Yes, competitive analysis are real. Yes, market intelligence has value. Studying the landscape is part of strategic planning. All of that is true at the same time. And that's none, and that's not what I'm trying to describe tonight, right? I'm not describing any of that. So, what I am describing though is that the pattern where the smarts use their analytical capability as a permission structure for unlimited consumption of other people's progress without corresponding output and obligations to their own work, right? To their own work. The analysis never closes. The research phase never ends. The intelligence gathering produces no deployable intelligence because the deployment is always one more research cycle away. And I was in that trap. Me. When I had my smarts hat on, I was in that trap, right? And here's the test. Think about this. Sit with this. After your last deep dive into a competitor's or peer's content, what specific action did you take on your own work as a direct result of that very research that you was conducting? Not a general sense of needing to improve, not a vague awareness of where you need to stand, right? A specific action, a documented one, right? A call made, something, a segment written, a product updated, something. And if your answer is nothing, you did nothing, or if the answer takes more than 5 seconds to produce, which I know it is right now, I can see your brain spinning right now, man. I see all of your brain spinning right now. You're taking too long. That's longer than 5 seconds, right? Then that session was not research. It was comparison in a lab coat, right? And a lot of you guys are wearing lab coats, right? Because the smarts version of this trap is the most expensive version in the room because the smarts are capable of producing the most valuable output. When a smarts redirects 20 hours a week into analytical consumption instead of building opportunity costs, that's not 20 hours of generic content. That's 20 hours of potentially transformative work that only the specific mind that's within the smarts can produce, right? And I want to tell you this, right? Smarts, listen, and look, I don't say this often, man. Stay with me, right? Smarts, your knowledge is not the deliverable. Your knowledge applied to a real problem and shipped as something another person can use is that deliverable. The analysis in your head is not a receipt. The white paper is not a receipt. Who's writing white papers? It's not a receipt. I tell myself that, right? The framework is a receipt. The published work is a receipt. The consulting engagement is a receipt. The system you built and deployed is a receipt, right? And you're sitting on more material than most people in the room will ever have. The question is not whether you're smart enough to produce something great. The question is whether you will stop analyzing other people's great things long enough to build your own, right? And there's also a specific trap inside the credentials comparison that hits the smarts community differently than it hits the other communities and the family, right? Because watching other people stack degrees, certifications, publications, and speaking engagements and writing books while you're a mid-build of your own academic work can generate a particular kind of paralysis, right? You start to feel behind in the knowledge game, even when you are ahead in the execution game, right? You start to wonder if your framework is complete enough to ship before someone else ships something similar. I have that problem too. I actually think about that a lot, right? And nothing is ever complete enough by that standard. Because the standard of completeness defined by comparison is an infinite horizon. You will never reach it because there will always be someone who has done more, right? Done more research, published more papers, accumulated more credentials, right? And it's never ended. The finish line, that's never the finish line, right? That's only a moving target designed to keep you from shipping. You need to ship the incomplete version. It will reduce feedback that no amount of research on other people's work will ever provide. My smarts, I need that feedback more than you need another research cycle, right? Put the phone down, close the tabs, open that document that you're working on, and build it, right? Build it, right? And my final boss is in the room. I know everything I've said so far. Every word. Hold on, get me, right? This speech that I'm giving right now. Some of you like to post the quotes that I see. You post quotes about running your own race, right? Shout out to Sydney, right? They have coached someone through this exact trap. They have 37 posts about staying in your lane. And what you need to do to achieve your goals, right? And then they do it anyway. They do it in private. It's at 11 o'clock p.m. while the rest of the house is quiet. Because Final Boss's version of the comparison trap is this, right? And this version causes the most damage precisely because it never gets named. It lives in private. And it doesn't show up in content. It doesn't show up in those mastermind meetings. It runs in the quiet, right? Because Final Bosses is not scrolling for validation. Final Bosses is running competitive positioning analysis without authorization from their own strategy. They are checking someone else's revenue signals, their audience growth trajectory, their brand expansion, their partnership announcements, and they're running those numbers against their own. Not to feel better, to know where they stand in the race, right? And to see if that strategy has already told them that they aren't in the race, right? And here's a specific weapon that makes this version of the trap dangerous for Final Bosses. Because the comparison is not emotional. It's analytical. It feels justified. It feels like diligence. It feels like the kind of diligence that built their success in the first place. And because it feels analytical, it bypassed the emotional warning system that would flag it as comparison if it showed up as a feeling, right? And Final Bosses, you usually fall asleep roughly between 1 and 2 a.m., right? Having running all of your analysis that you're going to run, right, of all your competitors, right, and for the last 6 months, and having produced zero output on your research in the last 6 months, right? The analysis was clean. The output was empty. That is the quiet version of the construction delay, and it's costing the Final Bosses in the room more cumulative momentum than any external obstacle that you can name, right? You say you're empire building, right? But empire building requires your full strategic attention during the construction window. Not 80%, not split between your plan and a surveillance of someone else's plan, right? The reason your strategy is as strong as it is because it comes from the same source that makes the comparison trap dangerous for you. You are analytical, right? Apply it fully. Apply it fully, right? Apply that fully to your own plan becomes a liability, right? And I want to give you guys something, right? Final Bosses, right? I want to give you something scheduled, something deliberate, something that has a time-based competitive analysis, right? And it's not something that I want to do daily or nightly, but something I want to give you guys monthly, right? And I need you to set the time on this, right? I need you to run the analysis with a defined output requirement, which means you do not close the session until you have produced one specific strategy adjustment to your own plan as a direct result of what you learned. One specific adjustment, not a general awareness. A dated, named, actionable change, an actionable item that you can put down on your roadmap, right? Because everything outside that scheduled session is comparison, and you need to name it. The moment you find yourself running the numbers outside the scheduled window, you name it. That is the comparison. And I'm outside my protocol, right? I'm outside of mine. Trust me. Trust me when I tell you this, right? The final bosses who run that protocol through Arc 4 will arrive at Arc 5 with a structure that is genuinely stronger than their competitors because it was built with full strategic attention and the right plan, right? Look, start on your own empire. That is the only competitive advantage that matters. And it compounds, right? It compounds. Now, and I am hot. I'm burning up in here, man. Gee whiz. Whoo! Right. So let's get on board the fire train, man. We're going to go on to take a trip. And our next destination, man, we got about 10 minutes, right? Our next destination is going to be let me see. What is the next destination going to be? We talked about other people's receipts. Oh, let's talk about the receipts you already have, right? Let's talk about the receipts you already have, right? And I'm going to say something, and it's going to surprise you, right? But I need it to land, right? I need it to land. And I want you to understand, man, gee whiz, I'm hot. I need this to land. Look, you're further along than you think you are, right? I know I've been beating you up most of the episode, but I want you to understand that you are further along. You are more further than you think you are, right? And not to say that you're not further along than anyone else, but further along than you've been giving yourself credit for. And the reason you cannot see it is because the comparison trap has had your eyes pointed at someone else's receipts for so long that your own receipt stack has become invisible to you, right? Has become invisible to you. And we talked about that, man. We talked about it. But it's time to take inventory for ourselves, right? We talked about 5 categories of receipts that are sitting in your portfolio right now that you aren't counting because you're too busy counting someone else's, right? And category 1, we talked is education receipts. Category 2 was output receipts. Category 3 was infrastructure receipts. Category 4 was relationship receipts, right? And category 5 was personal receipts. Your assignment, right? You know, I like to give out assignments. After the show, I need you to write down every receipt you have in your portfolio from Arc 4 so far, right? Episode 240 through tonight, right? That's 11 episodes. And not what you planned, but what actually happened. We're talking about big receipts and small ones. We're talking about infrastructure and output. We're talking about education and relationships, personal and professional. Make the list, right? Make the list. You know, it's an audit, man. You know that. That's what we do, right? And I want you to look at it. Then I want you to see that as a builder who's been building quietly, consistently on their own foundation. While the comparison trap was telling you to stand still. You weren't standing still. You were building. You were silently building, right? And tonight, I want you to see that. And I want you to acknowledge it, right? And I need you to build faster. Okay? I need you to build faster. Now, every protocol needs a behavioral installation to become real, right? Knowing the trap exists does not stop it. Installing specific behavioral countermeasure does. And tonight, I'm going to give you the 3-step upgrade protocol that converts everything we've covered in this episode in a weekly practice that runs through the rest of Arc 4, right? Because I want you to be ready for Arc 5. Man, listen, you need to be ready for Arc 5. Declaration. Declaration is going to lead us into the harvest, season 5, right? So let's start with this. Step 1, do a daily receipt log, right? Every day before you open any social media platform, I want you to write down what you're building today. One line, make it specific. Doesn't have to be a goal, right? A production commitment. And today I'm going to be writing such and such, right? Today I'm going to be recording such and such, right? And today I'm sending this proposal off, right? I'm completing this first draft of a white paper, right? That's what I do. I write white papers, right? One specific production commitment, right? Write it down before you even open your phone, right? And then at the end of the day, you write what actually shipped. One line, what actually got built, right? This creates 2 columns. Who committed it to the build and what you actually built. That 2-column log is the most powerful tool against the comparison trap available to you because it keeps your attention on your own production. Your comparison engine has no foothold in a mind that is tracking its own output. You need to be building and you need to keep your eyes on your own factory, right? That's step 2. Right? Step 2. The platform protocol. Every time you open a social media platform, you ask one question because before you start scrolling, right? Stay with me. I'm gonna go over just a little bit, but stay with me, right? And I'm here to output or to input, right? If input is your answer, post the content, close the app. If input is the answer, set a timer for 15 minutes. When the timer ends, the session ends. No extensions, no more minutes. The timer goes off. The app closes, right? 15 minutes is not arbitrary. It is the window within which legitimate inspiration and market awareness can be gathered, right? Between 15 minutes of unstructured consumption, you are no longer gathering intelligence. You are running the comparison engine. The timer is the interruption protocol installed at a stage of the trap cycle, the first stage, before it reaches stage 3. It's in the first stage, right? And then step 3, I need you to do a pre-recording, right? I got to do that too. I have to do some pre-records, right? Because every piece of content you produce, you implement content faster for a specific amount of time, right? And during that specific amount of time, you do not consume any content from creators that are in your lane, right? No podcasters, no coaches, right? No entrepreneurs, right? Nobody with the same niche as you, right? And you let your own voice be the loudest source in your head, right? And then you sit down and you build. The protocol applies to all 5 families. The smarts who run the daily receipt log because it converts their analytical capability toward their own output instead of their other people's. The final bosses run the platform protocol because it interrupts the private comparison session before it costs another hour of your construction time. The motivators run the pre-recording fast because it protects the voice that generates their most valuable receipts, right? And then my warriors, it runs all 3 because the warrior who installs a sound protocol executes it with deviation and execution and converts it into structural advantage over a period of time, right? 3 steps. Daily receipt log, platform protocol, pre-recording fast, install all three, and not and right now in this arc, not the next arc, in this one, right? Today, not tomorrow, right? Because tomorrow is episode 252 with Tech Tuesdays with the Sensei, right? Right? And then we're going to come back and we're going to do this all over again, right? Listen, the protocol is the receipt, and we're going to install it tonight. Now, we're getting ready to close, right? Getting ready to close. But before we do, there's a declaration preview that I want to discuss, right? Because I want to show you where this is going, because ARC 4 builders need to be able to see the structure they are building towards, not to get ahead of themselves, but to stay oriented when the work gets hard and the construction site gets loud and the comparison engine fires off at 2 a.m. and tells them that none of the things that they're doing is adding up to anything, right? Episode 271 opens ARC 5, the declaration. We're 20 episodes out, right? Approximately 4 weeks of construction remaining after episode 271 opens. We'll be in the arc where the season closes, where the rebirth becomes named and permanent, where the structure you built in ARC 4 gets a flag planted on top of it, and stand in front of your community and say, this is what I became, right? This is what I became, right? This is what I built. This is the proof. The declaration is not a speech. The declaration is the receipts laid on the table. Every receipt stacked in ARC 4 becomes the evidence and declaration of ARC 5. And the declaration is only powerful tool as the evidence that's behind it, right? Because you cannot declare rebirth with nothing to show for the construction phase. The declaration requires structure. The structure requires receipts. The receipts require that you keep your eyes on your prize, keep your eyes on your site through the full ARC window, right? Every week from episode 240 through 270 is a week of either stacking receipts or watching someone else stack theirs. And the declaration in ARC 5 will reflect exactly which choice you made during that build, right? During that build. And I want you to do one thing for me tonight before we close, right? I need you to write down the declaration. Not the goal, right? Not the goal, not a vision, but a declaration. Write the declaration down, right? Something you will be able to say out loud at the opening of ARC 5 because you built it between this episode and episode 270. And the declaration must be specific, right? It must be real, and it must require receipts to prove it, right? Look, my structure went from blueprint to visible structure. That is the declaration, right? You shipped something that was a draft, and it became something tangible. That's the declaration, right? You brought in some revenue in ARC 4 that was higher than any other previous ARC, right? That's a declaration. You recorded an episode, or you committed to do something that you were supposed to do, right? That's the declaration. Look, one declaration. Write it down tonight and place it somewhere you will see it every day up until episode 270, right? And every time the comparison engine fires, you look at that. Every time you feel the pull toward someone else's receipts, you look at that, right? Let it pull you back to your own site, to your own foundation, to your own building, right? Because you are building toward a declaration that's already yours. You just have to build it. The comparison trap cannot follow you into ARC 5, the harvest, right? If you give it nowhere to stand in this arc, it won't go to ARC 5, right? The declaration. You need to build the thing. Stack the receipts. Arrive at the declaration with evidence in your hands, right? And listen, I'm cheering you on, man. I'm cheering all you guys on. To my smarts, to my final bosses, to my warriors, I'm cheering all you guys on, man. I am waiting for you, right? And it will be everything, man. We're building this community together. We're on this journey together, man. We are in this family, community, and nation together doing this one thing that we're building, man. I'm telling you, it's going to be magnificent, right? It's going to be magnificent, right? So let's get on board the fire the train as we close out, right? Look, we close every Motivation Monday with an assignment. It's not a suggestion, right? I've already given you guys some work, right? But here's something. And this isn't a recommendation. This is an assignment. Because suggestions produce optional behavior. Optional behavior does not build empires. You came here to build, and this is what it requires, right? Let's get to work. Tonight's assignment has 3 parts. All 3 are required. None are optional, right? You complete them tonight, and you start them tonight. But you do not close the episode and go to sleep without having this the least thing begun of all 3, right? So let's talk about it real quick, and then we're out of here. Part 1 is the inventory. Within 2 hours after the episode closes, open a document or pick up a piece of paper and write down every receipt you've produced. We talked about that earlier, right? And I want you to write it down since the beginning of Arc 4, which started at episode 240. Right now, this is episode 251, right? 11 episodes in, right? Sitting Down Sundays ignited the arc. And now I need to see what you planned. I want to hear what actually happened, what you shipped, what moved, what exists today that didn't exist on May 17th, right? We're talking about big receipts, and we're talking about small ones. We're talking about outputs, right? We're talking about infrastructure. We're talking about education. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about personal receipts. Write them all down. Make the list visible. You have to name it because you've been building, and I want you to see it, right? I want you to see what you've been building, right? And that list will prove it. And then part 2. Part 2 is the block. Identify the single biggest comparison trigger in your current weekly behavior. Not the general awareness of the problem, a specific one. A specific platform. Maybe you're addicted to Pornhub or something, right? I don't know. That was wild. The specific account, the specific scroll session, the specific time of day when the comparison engine runs hardest. Name it specifically. Write it down next to the receipt inventory on the one side of the page and write down everything you've built on the other. And on the other side, the specific thing that has been trying to stop you from building. Look at both, right? Do your own comparison of your own stuff, right? Make a decision about which side of the page grows and which one doesn't get watered, right? That's part 2. In part 3, I need you to write down one receipt that you will produce between now and next Monday, right? Not a goal, not a commitment. No, not a goal, but I want you to do a commitment, right? A commitment with a specific deliverable attached to it. One chapter written, one episode recorded and published, one contract sent, one product listed, one system built, one specific thing that will exist next Monday that does not exist right now. Name it, produce it, right? Present it, throw it in the chat, right? Because we're going to be talking about it again next. We might talk about it on Sunday on Sitting Down, right? That's the assignment. It's 3 parts: inventory, block, and receipt, right? This is season 4, the rebirth, arc 4, the construction, episode 251. The arc runs through episode 270. You have 19 episodes of construction remaining before. Hold on. The bat phone is calling. The bat phone is calling.
Huh? Why you calling me? Aren't you still on?
I didn't call you. You called me.
No, I didn't.
Ma, I am still doing. All right, bye. Bye. That's funny. Look, as we close, man, that was my mom. Look, it happens, right? It happens. This is a live show. 19 episodes before Arc 5, the declaration opens. 19 weeks of opportunities to stack receipts that would define what you declare, right? Listen, I am the Final Boss. This is the Final Boss podcast. I'm your host, your builder, your fellow sovereign in this arc. I show up here every Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern time not because it's easy, but because the community needs it, because the mission demands it, because the receipts I stack on this show are part of the declaration that I will make in episode 271. I'm building with you, not in front of you, but I'm building with you, and I'm building a lot, right? I'm building a lot right now, man. You'll be you will be amazed, right? Listen, to every smarts who came tonight, thank you. Stop analyzing, start shipping. Your knowledge is the most valuable raw material in the room. Build something with it. To my final bosses, close the private comparison session. Open the execution plan. The empire is yours. Build it like it is, right? To every motivator, guard your voice. Fast before you record. Produce the authentic receipts that only your voice can produce, right? And to my warriors, your ground is stronger than anyone else's. I need you to build what you can hold and declare what you build, right? Stop counting other people's receipts. Start producing your own. And I will see you again on Tech Tuesdays at 9 p.m. live. Then again on Merger Wednesdays at 9 p.m. live. Then Sitting Down Thursdays at 9 p.m. live. No excuses, no execution, no cancellations. I'm sorry. Wow. It's go time, baby. All aboard the fired up train, man. Y'all wish y'all a great night. Thank you for joining the show. And as always, there's a heavy pain that comes with discipline, but there is an even heavier pain that comes with regret. I am here. We are here. This is the Final Boss Podcast, Final Boss Nation, Final Boss Family. And if I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Be smart. No. Pause. Be balanced, be equal, and be smart. That's our show for tonight, man. Thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you again tomorrow for Tech Tuesdays, right? I think the sensei might be, is he going to be out? I have to check with him. I have to check the schedule. If not, you'll see me tomorrow for Tech Tuesdays. Talk to you soon. Have a good night.